Okay, so in our last video we went over the tools commonly associated with servicing small format cores. Today I'm going to show you how to pin one up, and rather than kind of walking you through the entire process, I'm just going to illustrate how I do it and maybe share some techniques and tips associated with small format cores, because I mean there are tons of videos online on YouTube. There are manuals online that kind of walk you through the whole process and show you every little detail possible about it, and can do a lot better job than I can in just a short video. We've got a few of these manuals on our website. If you visit lockreference.com in the library section, specifically the cores and cylinders section under locks, we've got the A2, A3, and A4 service manuals from Best for free to download, and those kind of go over a lot of detail that is associated with these cores. But keeping that in mind, today I'm just going to, like I said, show you how I do it and maybe go over some things that they don't, kind of techniques, stuff I've learned the hard way over the years. Today we're going to be working on A2 systems, which is by far the most popular keying system Best has ever made, and multiple manufacturers like Medico with Keymark or Kaba with Peaks have used this keying system as the basis for their initial products, and they've kind of gone beyond that with their second generation products, but still use the principles and the keying system for their small format variations. So we're going to assume you have the keys, we're going to assume you have cores, pins, springs, caps, or covers depending on the type you have, like we said last time. And I'm going to assume that you have a way to cut keys, or either a way to get keys that have already been cut, and a way to decode those, or at least know the biddings on them, so that we can use that to form a pinning chart. Now, on our website we also have, let's see if I can get that to focus, pinning charts and worksheets that can help you learn, or I guess derive, the pin segments from your key bidding. And this is one for A2 systems that we have. This is modeled after Falcon's 2381-A form that Jerry Finch made back in the day, many years ago. This is, in my opinion, the best form ever made to help you walk through the math involved with making a pinning chart. I don't use these anymore. That's not a knock against them. I've just, after doing so many, literally tens of thousands, I can do it all in my head now. But if you're first starting out, or if you want to learn it a little bit more before you start doing that, these charts and worksheets are very good. If you go to lockreference.com and click on Tools in the top right, you'll see a few icons pop up. Click on Pinning Worksheets, and the first page that pops up will show you the worksheets and forms for small format. We've got a few decoding worksheets as well as pinning worksheets for A2 and A4. We didn't bother around with A3 because it's so seldom seen and used anymore. It's long since been discontinued, but all those forms are available for you, free to download. Print as many as you want, use them in your shop, your institution, your basement, wherever you want. Give them out. Like I said, they're free. It's to help everybody out. Kind of walking through this, I mean, I don't really want to explain it because it's so simple. Jerry did a great job laying this out, and like I said, you can't mess it up. If you needed an example, I guess this is clear enough in the camera that if you wanted to pause it to see how I work through it, you can figure it out that way. But you'll see at the bottom I've got the pin segments highlighted. For these cores, we're just going to do a control key and a change key. On a master keyed system, you'd see this portion filled out that I've got hyphens through. For cores that only use a change key and a control key, you're only going to have 3 pins. You're going to have your top pin, your build-up pin, which is also sometimes called the control pin, and then a bottom pin. On 2-level systems, which is a master and a change key, or higher, you're going to have at least 4, and that'll be the top pin, the build-up pin, the master pin, and the bottom pin. Now, on some complex systems where you have selective master keys or multiple control keys, you might have upwards of 5 or even perhaps more in a single chamber. but that is far beyond the scope of this video. For now, we're just going to do a simple change key and control key, so 3 pins. So I'm going to put this up here and follow along with it while I'm doing it. I've got 2 cores because what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to use first the pinning block we discussed in the last video. I'm going to put it in there and kind of work around it so you can see a clearer way of how I do it. In the second example, I'm going to get rid of this and show you how I do it by hand, and that might be, I guess, a little bit awkward to see depending on how I place my hand, so I want to give you, I guess, 2 ways of seeing it. So these are already pinned up, so I need to dump these. And what I'll do, like we showed last time, I'm not going to do it in my hand and have pins go everywhere, and I don't have a bucket nearby, and it would be a pain to get the camera around it, so I'm just going to knock them out in the dumping block. And rather than use the dumping block as the pinning block like I showed in the last one, helps if I put it right side up, I'm going to use the dedicated one because it's not, I guess, as obnoxiously big, so you'll be able to see more. Didn't tighten the set screw enough. Okay, so that should be all of them. Missed one. Didn't eat my Wheaties this morning. Okay, so that's out. So with this first one, we're going to go ahead and put this in. Okay, now the first thing you need to do when you key these is you'll see that I've got the keyway where it should be in what they call the key pull position, where basically if you were to walk up to the door and if this lock was pinned and locked, this is how it'd be. Also, I've got, I don't know if you can tell, the control lug thrown. So in other words, when both of those conditions are met, all the chamber holes line up, and that makes it possible to stick all the pins in all the way and make sure that they seat properly, because what happens is maybe say the control lug's not thrown, you know, you'd probably get 2 or 3 pins in before they'd start sticking over the lip of it, and then you wouldn't be able to pin any further. So it's easy to do just by eyeballing it, kind of moving it with your fingers. As kind of a last way to make sure I've got it, I will stick the ejector pin in all the way to the keyway. I won't go far enough to engage the injector holes because then I'm kind of limited in my motion, but once I get in the keyway, I'll kind of go around in a circle to make sure that they are all perfectly aligned, and that's going to help with making sure that the pins go all the way in, like I said. So I'm just going to start pinning this. The way that small format is keyed and the biddings are listed is tip to bow, and that means tip, which is position 1, all the way, I guess, furthest away from the bow. You're working from the tip of the key to the bow of the key. So we're going to start at chamber 1, move to chamber 2, 3, 4, and so on. That is the best way to do it. I've seen some people that might do all the pin segments, you know, all the bottom pins, and then they'll move on to all the master pins and then build-up pins and so on and so forth, to where basically they're not going to be able to check the keys at any point during the process until it's all done. And when you're new to this, I would suggest pinning it 1 chamber at a time, going a step further and actually putting the spring in there and holding it with your thumb, placing the key in and checking it as you go. And I say this because when you're new to this, you're not necessarily going to be, I guess, as seasoned as some of us, and so you want to make sure that you don't shoot yourself in the foot and waste any more time or pins than you have to. And so it's very easy to do 1 by 1 chamber, and eventually you'll get so good that you really won't have to do it. I don't do it anymore, and I rarely, you know, not to toot my own horn, but I rarely mess any up. So, but I always do check them with all the springs in before I cap it, and that just saves me, like I said, time and money. So we're going to start doing this first with chamber 1, and I'm just going to kind of go through the process, and as I see stuff, I'm going to tell you about it. Okay, so here's a great example. The pin's not going all the way in, it's binding slightly, and that's just because of the orientation. There's a little bit more tolerance in the chamber diameter as opposed to the pins. The pins are a little bit smaller, so they cannot seat properly sometimes. And that's not saying it's a bad lock, that's just built-in tolerances. If they were the same size, I mean, it'd be a tight fit. So what we're going to do, in that instance, I was able to knock it in with my finger. Sometimes you'll have to use your tool, the back end of it, kind of tap it into place. So this will be the third pin for this chamber. Okay, that one went in. Now, I've got all the pin segments in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to press down with my ejector tool, make sure that it's all seated properly. Now, before I start checking, I'm going to get to at least 2, because what can happen is sometimes, you know, your control may be so close to the master and the tolerances and whatnot that maybe the control turns the plug itself rather than the control lug. So we're going to key up at least 2 before we start checking. Worst case scenario, we'd have to check both or at least 1 if we did something wrong. So I've got both in. Now I'm going to take 2 springs. I'm going to put them in there. I'm going to hold it with my thumb. Again, I'm left-handed. I'm going to put my control key in. All right, it's clicking at the control, so that's working. And we've got the master key working. All right, so we're good to go. You can leave the springs in if you'd like. I guess that kind of helps you keep track of where you are. Of course, you could always look in there. Speaking of looking in there, once you get more adept at this, you're going to be able to press it down. You're going to be able to look in here once they're all pinned and kind of look at the relationship of the stack versus the chamber itself, and you're going to be able to see hopefully a uniform distance between the top of the pin, there went a spring, top of the pin and the top of the chamber. And what that's going to tell you is that since small format uses a uniform stack height, in A2's case it's a 23 pin segment length, you're going to be able to tell that they're keyed properly by analyzing that. Whereas if you put in a pin that was too short or too tall or whatnot, you might be at a 24 or a 22, and it doesn't take much effort to look down in there and see if it's off, and that can kind of give you an indication of where you might have pinned something wrong. I wish I could show you, but you know, the camera, the lighting, I'm not going to be able to, but it's something you'll pick up as you go along. Okay, we're at chamber 3 and that's still working. Control key. Now I'm not going to do that anymore because I kind of trust my pinning, but you kind of get the point. You would need to keep doing that throughout your progression until you got close enough or comfortable enough with the system to not need to do that. Okay, so we're in there. Okay, here's another example of one hanging up, and this is very common. This is a 6 master pin. It's also very common with 4 master pins, and 5s, I guess. It's not seating properly, so what I'm just going to do is very lightly, just tap it in. And hopefully that's all you're going to need. Now, if it takes any more than a light tap, something's wrong, so we don't want to force it. It should be a very light tap. It shouldn't be hard at all. So we're moving along. And over time, as you get more comfortable with it, your process will speed up a bit. I think in the first video I posted on this channel, it's just me not saying anything, being antisocial and pinning one up. I was able to do it in about 1:30. And that's just pinning it, not capping it, anything like that. Okay, so we've got them all pinned up, got all our springs in. We're going to put our thumb in and hold it snugly. Control key's working. Okay, we're going to pull that out. Put the master in. Master works. Okay, so if at any point you messed up, you can carefully take this out, or if you're holding it in your hand, you already have it. You can use the ejector holes to clear out a chamber. All you do is need to press up and empty them all out. And that's a very simple process. And so say you're keying one up, you get to a chamber and you put the spring in and you notice it's not working anymore. So now we know that there's something wrong with that chamber. Simply all we have to do is go in through the bottom to the ejector holes and push it out to start over. So I'm going to take this off camera for a second and I'm going to cap it. And then I'm going to show you the process I use to lubricate and test these out completely. Okay, so I've got it in, and I already know my keys work, obviously. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put my control key in, turn it to retract the lug. I'm going to take this housing that we talked about last time. I'm going to stick it in there. Now, here's a contentious point. What type of lubricant to use? I'm not going to get in that argument because God knows locksmiths and lock sports love nothing more than to argue about the best lube and all that. I'm just going to use fluid film right now because that's what Medico uses to warranty their locks, and we do a lot of Medico, so we obviously have it. I'm going to take the core, I'm going to put it upside down. Okay, I'm going to take the tip of the straw, and if I can get it in the keyway, some of the larger keyways allow it, I'm going to put it in slightly. In this case, this is an H keyway. I can't get it in, so I'm going to put it as close as I can and give it a 1 second burst. Okay, now fluid film is a wet lubricant, so it's kind of messy. But after I clean off the the face of the plug, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my master with it still upside down. I'm going to put it in, and I'm going to go back and forth at least 5 times to kind of work that lubricant through. Now the reason we do it upside down is when we spray it, we're kind of allowing gravity to help us out, and it's going to help carry that lubricant to the operating shear line as well as the control shear line. And that's what we want. And it doesn't hurt to do it a few times with the control key as well. So I've got it pulled out, and what I'll do is I'll wipe it. If I'm going to engrave the core, I can engrave it now. If I'm going to write on it with a Sharpie to mark it, I can do that as well. So that's basically some of the tips and tricks I use when I'm keying it up. Now, as I said in the video, I don't normally use the pinning blocks. I'm going to show you how I do it. And this is going to be with the cylinder in hand. Now, like I said, I'm left-handed, so I'm going to be doing that. Keep the ejector tool in my left hand. When I'm grabbing for pins, I'm going to keep the core in my left hand. And while I'm grabbing for a pin with my right hand, I'm going to keep it steady. I'm going to put all the pins in here. Then when I've got my chamber full, I'm going to pass back to the right, press down with the left, put it back in the left, move on to the next chamber, so on and so forth until I'm completely done. And you'll notice another thing is I'm using my hands as opposed to tweezers. It's just faster. There's no debating that. When I'm putting the pins in, you'll kind of notice I'm twisting my hand like that. That's so that when I put it in, I'm putting pressure on it from completely the top, not at an angle where it could bind or anything like that. I'm pushing it right down from behind it so that it's going in as straight as possible. And I guess I'm going to consciously now be doing more pronounced, but you know, you kind of get it. Okay, again, caught up. I'm going to stop for a second, switch back to the right, lightly tap it in. Again, I kind of dropped it wrong, so I'm going to try to correct it. Got it in, rotate the thumb to push it in. Okay, I'm going to set it now. Put it into a block again. Now I'm going to do what we just did before. You know, even though I've done so many of these, I still like to check at the very end to make sure that it works, because there's nothing less fun than having to dump chambers one by one and then recap them individually, because then I'm forced to use the capping machine or press that does it one by one, and those aren't fun to load. Press my key, key turns, change key does at least, and let's see if the control key does. Yep, we're getting that going. Alright, so that's it. That's basically the process for pinning small format cores. A lot of people are hesitant to get started with these, maybe a little timid around them. These are very, very simple cores to service, to pin up, to master key. Anything you would commonly associate regular cylinders with works just as well. Like I said, we have a ton of resources on lockreference.com to help you with this. We have the decoding worksheets, we have the pinning worksheets, we have manuals, and not just for small format, we also have for Corbin, Russwin, and Sargent. So if this is something you want to get started with and learn, the resources are there for you, available free of charge. If you have any questions, you can always post a comment or contact me on Twitter or on the website itself. We have a contact form. Other than that, that's about all there is to it, and we'll see you next time.